Hey, good evening everyone. It is Monday the 4th of August and welcome to another T-Log. I only got a couple done last week, but as you know, I'm trying to cover quite a bit of ground and there's only so many hours in the day. On the blog today, I posted a message about negative and positive tests. So in the testing profession, we tend to talk about negative and positive tests. And it's been something that's been troubling me for a while. I've scribbled some notes on it, but I decided that I needed to really kind of articulate what my view was on negative and positive tests. Tests that are either manual and or automated, and how we should be expressing those. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the idea, but for those that are not strictly, the idea of the negative and positive test scenario or perspective is that you have a test case that perhaps initially you will write the test cases that are looking for positive outcomes, the things that the system is supposed to do, the behaviors, the features, the functionality that it should express, and you test for them being the way they should be, and if they're not the way they should be, then it's a fail. Positive tests are, I would say, pretty easy to write. They're pretty easy to write badly too, partly because they're so seemingly obvious. That is, we would write them mainly against requirements. Some of it might be conversations, these requirements might be in the form of story cards, etc., but they're pretty explicit. And so we'll write a test that goes, does that or does it not occur in the way that we expect? Negative test cases are often assumed to be the failures, the error messages, the recovery sequences, everything that would happen that you wouldn't want to happen but you still expect to happen. And that is, I think, the key with the negative test cases, and I outline this in the blog post, that in fact they are still positive tests, because you've got the stuff that you want to happen and the stuff that you don't want to happen, but both are expected. You've coded them in, or by virtue of the configuration, the technology that you're using, that is the expected outcome. And so then what negative tests are the unexpected, the things that you're trying to safeguard against. And I've put some typical examples here of what I've seen before, and that can be things like a web server is down, a configuration file is missing, or it's the wrong configuration file. And you need to apply inductive and deductive analysis. And I mentioned these again in the post. I've written a couple of articles on this before. I'll make sure they're linked to. But the reason that you need inductive and deductive analysis for negative test cases is because you literally have to imagine what these scenarios would be. So in an inductive, you define the failure mode, and what I say here is you then try and work out what that failure mode will look like in this system. And in deductive, you define some form of erroneous behavior, again as I mentioned in the post here, and then you try and work out what error would need to be present for that erroneous behavior to be being exhibited. And then you put your test cases together to say, well, in the event that I try and make a HTTP request but nothing happens, or I get a 500 error, what is the likely root cause? Well, maybe I've got connectivity issues, put a test in place for that. Maybe I've got web server issues, put a test in place for that. And very often these negative tests, you will be told when coming up with the scenarios, that can never happen. This system is so dependent on the database, the web server, the connectivity, the authentication authorization rules working correctly, that we will just know. And I don't need to tell you that the history of software is littered with that should just never have happened. We never expected that to happen. The inductive-deductive approach is a form of failure modes and effects analysis. It's a very specialized technique applied in safety critical environments. And I've always said this, that there's no reason why we shouldn't be using it. We should absolutely be using FMEA when trying to devise clever test cases. In fact, I think you could make an argument that says if you were to do no other testing, you could throw positive test cases away and just do the negative ones, on the basis that if you are reasonably experienced in the application and have a sort of acceptable, reasonable perspective on what an application should do, then you don't need the test cases. You can go really hardcore exploratory. You can just have, a testing mission defined, some sketches, some mind maps, and from that you can say whether the implementation is correct, and define correct, I know, but work with me on this. Whereas the negative test cases are hidden conditions that you have to hunt out. And if you go to Wikipedia and look for FMEA, failure modes and effects analysis, you'll see there's additional attributes to FMEA, such as the probability, the impact, and a phrase I forget, but how long this failure mode can be hidden in the system. And if you think about safety critical applications, so that's keeping planes flying, stopping nuclear weapons and nuclear plants exploding. Also, you have making sure that medical equipment doesn't fail. Then you can see why all of that is absolutely important, and why would you therefore not apply that to business applications, finance applications, etc. Well, you should be. So read through the article, and I hope it will help just tweak your perspective on positive and negative test cases. Okay, talking about stuff I've written, I'm pleased to say that Testing Circus has now published its August edition, and my article on security testing broken down is in there. You can see we've got Santosh Tupad on the front of the magazine this month. In fact, I think I have it open here. Here he is, looking like a bit of a bad boy gangster, introducing his new company by the looks of it. I got the impression he's opened this with others, but I'll let you read the article. And the amusing thing about industries we love to explore, porn. I'm sure you do, but only on company time, yeah. So hey, it's good to see the entrepreneurial spirit in the software testing profession. We came, again, 10-15 years ago when I started, we came from a point of being pretty much second best to development, business analysis, support, etc. And it's good to see that individuals are pushing those boundaries. My own contracting and self-employment work, Pradeep, of course, with Mulya Testing and colleagues, I should say, just pushing those boundaries a little bit and defining who we are and what we are. So all the best with that, Santosh. I hope it works out. Sure it will. And be sure to have a look through these various articles. I've put my article in here, and what I've done here is to try and break down. I'll just flick to this again. I won't show you the whole thing. This is not the purpose of these videos, but what I've done is to define what I believe is a security assessment lifecycle. And the thrust of the article is, we talk about penetration testing, but it's not just penetration testing. That's like saying performance testing, and immediately even the most moderately informed tester will go, but it's not just performance testing. What type of performance testing? And likewise with security. And I say penetration is over here, and we have at least 3 other test types. I'm sure super experienced and competent test professionals would say, you know what, I would break these down even further. That's fine. Let's get the conversation going. Add some comments to this. On the Testing Circus website, you can add some comments, I believe. So go for it. Throw some comments in there. Share ideas and thoughts with the community. So have a look through. What I explain what each type is, how it's done, and I try and break down kind of key steps about what would you be doing if you were delivering this service. But have a read through. There's plenty of other articles here. In fact, I think it's like 50 odd pages they've got this time. But right at the bottom, I'll do a little sell for them here. Submit articles. This magazine, this edition, was meant to be, I believe, entirely focused on security testing. And the next one is about cloud. In fact, it says it there, testing in the cloud. It would be a great compliment to all of the team at Testing Circus if they were able to produce an edition that literally had so many submissions. It was all about the headline topic. Whereas I'm sure they'll have their regular pieces in here, but get every one of these all about, in this case, testing in the cloud. It's a hot topic, so go for it. Thank you to everyone here. I'm very proud to have my my article in here. I hope you enjoy it. Again, leave some comment. Okay. That was the other thing. In the article, I talk about needing. Sorry, I meant to check this before I actually did the video. No, okay, it's not there. Right. In the article, I talk about. In fact, let me scoot to that, because this is a super critical thing here, that we need to have authorization to test. Essentially, authorization to test is a document that says I am giving you as a customer authorization to bash around in this system, with your hacker hat on. And what is this system? Well, this system is this, and you'll log in using these accounts with these passwords, etc., for this period and so on. I've got, as part of my test hats work, I've got a couple of templates for this. Now, I'm talking about UK legislation here, by the way. So you need to find the equivalent legislation in your own country, or of course, if your client is UK based, then ask them. Well, you negotiate with your client whether the contract is under UK law. It will strictly be flagged as England and Wales. I'm sure you know that, but just to because Scots law is slightly different. But Computer Misuse Act for the UK, there will be equivalents in your own country, but the documents themselves probably about the same. So what I will do, I'll throw those two templates under other templates and put a tweet out once I've done that. I'll try and get that done tonight, just so it's in time with the article. Okay, so that's those pieces that I wanted to talk about. Talking about the whole contracting, self-employment thing. I've been toying with the idea of putting together, because as a visual cue, I go contracting. I'm sure it says it here. I'm with the Piccadilly Group at the moment here. I always say at the moment for people I work with, because I have this attitude that I'm 3 to 5 years, I'm going to move on, I'm going to go do something else, right? I mean, that's the nature of the industry, so I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to Chris and Dan over at PG there. But an article I was going to write, in fact, I think has been written. I'll probably write one similar here. So if you zip over to iTesting, who is who is this? Let me make sure I get the name right. Here we are, Colin Cherry. Oh, there we go. It's pretty why all the cherries in. So Colin Cherry has written an article about sustainable freelancing, and all of these points ring true. It's very, it's all very good stuff. If you're thinking of going contracting, if you are contracting, have a quick read of this. I'm sure there are many articles out there, but it's nice to see it just as a list together here. And Colin talks about some really practical things that I think a lot of contractors miss, and that's you are not working 365 days a year. You really, in fact, where is it? Yes, a very good point. Assume you're going to earn for 200 days, but you're going to have to spend for the whole lot. I'm afraid that's the harshness of reality. So budget appropriately. Be flexible around negotiating contracts. He says do roles. Yep, here we are. Do roles that aren't necessarily your core business. If you, I don't have it readily to hand here, but if you were to look over my CV or profile, this current role is test program manager, running, trying to save multi-million pounds with an investment bank by converting manual to automation. It's not that hands-on. It's very strategic. It's very it's a very broad role, quite difficult, calling on a lot of the experience that I have in order to help numerous teams pull their stuff together. And yet, rewind, and the previous role was a test manager. Rewind to that, and a previous role was a hands-on test analyst. So, as Colin says, the core business is always software testing, but you get the idea. And in fact, he does go on here to say, initially being employed as a test manager, he's morphed into, here we are, project and program management. Hey, welcome to the club. This is what we all have to do. So have a read through this. Again, I'll put a link in the description. Where does it go? Down below in the video, and also in the blog post that I cover, but very timely, very, very correct. What else have we got? Cherries remind me of Ruby. I mentioned the Ruby Basics Trello. I'm getting on to the more basics. Whoops, in fact, no, the basics wrap up. I'll get that done. Again, I'm trying to get through this stuff each evening, but I only have 3 or 4 evenings to crank through this stuff. But I put down here about test unit, and there is, of course, I think it's mini test, I always get the name slightly wrong, that is seemingly an updated version to test unit. This is the unit testing plugin framework. I'm not sure what the correct terminology is there for Ruby. And what you really should be doing, of course, is creating, well, in fact, I think I've got it open here. I'll tell you what this is in a second. This is a wrap up. But wherever you've written code, that's a bit of a rubbish example. Yeah, we'll stick with that anyway. Wherever you've written code, you really should be putting a unit test behind it, right? And so it may be that we actually want to pull this one forward. But then I found a very interesting blog, all the way from 2005 by Mike Clark, who talks about documenting your learning with Ruby, and this will apply to any programming language, by writing unit tests for the core functionality. Here we go. So he writes a new class string test, and checks the length. So one of the things we can do is we can do array.length, we can do string.length, etc. And here is, in fact, here is a test, if I'm reading this correctly. Make sure I am trying to speed read here. Here's a test for the standard functionality of Ruby. But what this allows him to do is say, if I can write a test, and I've said this before about why I write so many, whoops, where's my blog gone? Why do I write so many papers, etc., and why do I blog post? Because if I can, I know the subject matter. And of course, what Mike, even, I'm going to call him Colin now, what Mike is saying is if you can write unit tests for the core functionality of Ruby, or again in theory any language, then you must know the language. And I thought that was just an elegantly simple way of learning. So I'm toying with the idea of pulling this forward somewhere, quite where, I'm not sure. I don't want it to distract from what we're learning. It will probably stay there, but there may be an interlude, and if there is an interlude in that, you'll understand why. But do have a look at what Mike has written here. Very clever. And of course you have a whole suite that when it goes from Ruby 193 to 212, you can run your suite and instantly see what's changed within the scope of what you know and what you've got tests for, of course. So really good. So yep, we're going to cover that. Whoops. And mini test as well. Actually, let me just put that in before I forget. This is the joy of Trello. Mini test. We definitely need to cover that. I'm going to cover test unit first though, because I think it's more ubiquitous right now. Mini test is kind of coming in. It's not new, but it's certainly not as old as this. So if you get on a commercial engagement, the likelihood is you will encounter test unit before mini test. So let's whack that in there. Okay, hey, really pleased to see another 4, I think it is, subscribers to the YouTube channel. I hope this stuff is going in the right way. Remember, on the YouTube channel, everything that I upload is showing here in the sequence file. I've uploaded it, so this was the 5th most recent, 1st most recent video. And then I'm breaking them down into these channels. I'm not sure what they call them here. So here's the Ruby Basics, the VB script stuff, and the T-log, of course. I might drag this one up. In fact, yeah, because I've not done much work on SQL databases right now. Got a bunch of stuff to do. That card wall you can see over there is the bunch of stuff to do, and there's a lot. So let's leave this one here because I've got a lot of work to get on with. But there we go. Okay, hope there was some useful stuff in there, and be sure to just let me give the last plug. Be sure to pop back to the Testing Circus website, have a read through, check out the article, see what you think, and then if you're into Ruby, come and join me in the next Ruby Basics, where in fact what I'm going to be doing is a wrap up, and this script here that you see here is an example script using everything we've learned so far. And what I've done is to refer to which video in the series. So if we just go to the Ruby Basics playlist, which video in the series 14, 13, 12, you will find that stuff. So hopefully that's useful too. Well, that's it. That's all that mattered to me, as they say, and I shall see you very soon.